let me have the great pleasure of introducing Joe Bongiovanni. He's the one that introduced me, along with 15 other AFJM people who traveled to Minneapolis for a democracy convention. But Joe's passion made a big impression on me in 2017, and he really brought me into this. So I'm grateful and happy to introduce him to talk about CBDC. Go.
Okay, Mary Sanderson, thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you very much for being here, because you're fulfilling a great monetary reform role in the work that you're doing for the Alliance, and the Alliance is filling a great monetary reform role for the nation of the United States of America and our monetary system. And I want to first of all, start with a little bit of background. Everybody, I think, knows that I'm a high school graduate. And so for a high school graduate to be sitting here in front of 25 people to just talk about why not doing central bank digital currency seems kind of outlandish, and it probably is. But I can't not do it. Everything that I do with monetary reform, I can't not do it. And the reason that I can't not do it is because of my dad, because my dad is the real monetary reformer in the family, was passed away a number of years ago. But my dad was the one who took it upon himself to study the monetary system, to understand the system of money in this country. And he did it in terms of pretty much of a circle of political perspective, of political perspective. My dad was pretty much a Chamber of Commerce businessman. He was a conservative. He was Catholic, and he was conservative. With his political leanings, socially directed. So my dad, when he realized that there was something wrong with money and banking, when he realized that what's going on here is really not in the interest of the communities, that we live in and that we try to serve, and he, as a businessman employing people, he felt like the banking system was not set up to be good to the public, to the people. So by the time he came around, and when I say that, I just mean that, to adopt the monetary reform agenda of, the Chicago School or Irving Fisher's, and others who found that the debt-based money system was no good, which was my dad had already found that out. But when he got to the point of realizing that all of these things needed a public release, they all, in other words, it's either going to be something good, and if it is something good, it will be because it does it to the public, or it will be for the good of the private individuals. And my dad, even though he came up through the libertarian and conservative, wing of Austrian economics, in the end, I say he was much more of a progressive Democrat. Okay. Some people have said he was a socialist. Some people have said he was a communist, but they didn't really know my dad because he had no interest in any kinds of isms. He just was basically a people person. So my dad started drilling it into me in the 60s. And I didn't want to hear anything about it, I'll be honest. Okay, it was the 60s after all. And I was kind of somebody who was very much enjoying the life that was going on around me. And my dad kept, pushing and pushing and pushing. But as I was getting it, the more I was getting it, the better that I was I was feeling about it being something that I was having an interest in. And so my dad finally, eventually drove up in 1971. My wife and I and our daughter, we moved up to Canada and we bought some land, and we were doing the back to the land thing, you know. And my dad was still trying to convince me. We were exchanging 20-page letters every week. And it came a point in time when he got his supply of of the book of The Role of Money by Dr. Frederick Soddy, and he wanted me to have one. You know, he said, you need to have this, and if you read this book and you're not convinced to be a monetary reformer, I'll leave you alone up there, you know, in the woods. And I said, okay. I wasn't really in the woods, but, you know, but anyway, so what he did was he actually drove up to Canada with my mom and delivered me Soddy's The Role of Money. Now, I don't know if you people, anybody here has read Soddy's The Role of Money. Everybody should have to read Soddy's The Role of Money as part of civics, because the monetary system is the most powerful common, politically powerful common, the most economically powerful common, the most socially powerful common that exists. And it was Soddy who figured it out. You know, what the role of money really is, which is the distribution of wealth. Now, if there's anything wrong with the economy that we live in today under capitalism in this country and everywhere else, okay, it is the concentration of wealth. And that means that the money system is broken. And that was what my dad impressed upon me about that. Okay, the money system is broken because the money system, the role of money in a, you know, let's call it a liberal democracy or industrial democracy, or if you want, or whatever, is to distribute the wealth that is created in the economy, and essentially among the producers of the wealth, and thus becoming more egalitarian in its operations. So my dad convinced me of that. So why is that? Why does that even matter? That my dad convinced me of that? Because I'm going to say something in a minute or two about what Soddy has said about you know, this whole situation. But when my dad gave me the book, he said, here. Now he stayed a couple of days. Finally, he goes. You know, not finally. Excuse me. You know, eventually, he left. And I didn't open the book while he was there. I told him, I said, Dad, I'm not going to open it. And he left. And when the day that he left, I read the preface to The Role of Money. And it kind of knocked my feet out from under me, to be honest. Okay. And the next day I read the preface again, the second time. And the next day I read the preface again, the third time, before I got to the introduction. And the thing is that it turned everything around to my way of thinking. I mean, at the time, I was a non-nuclear environmentalist. I was the Economic Policy Committee chair of the Maritime Coalition of Environmental Protection Associations, and I was very busy doing a lot of energy things. I was mostly reading Amory Lovin's and applying Amory Lovin's energy economics to the economy, to economics, and I was working with a number of political parties in New Brunswick, which is where I was living. I was working with the Small Party of Canada. Jeff, I don't know if you ever heard of that. I was working with the NDP. Now that would be the provincial NDP. And eventually I went to work for the Liberal Party of New Brunswick as an energy and economic policy analyst. So where does that take me as far as I did that again, as far as central bank digital currency? Well, what it takes me is to a position of deep respect for the monetary system. And when I say deep respect for the monetary system, I mean that understanding how money works is a phenomenon that my dad, when he told me, he said, Joey, they don't teach this stuff in school. Now, my dad used to tell me a lot of things that I didn't believe. And that was one of them, you know. And but eventually I come to find out it's true. You know, the monetary system. When my dad, when he started me after he got through all the Austrian stuff, you know, he gave me three books of the author. Oh God, I'm forgetting I'm missing his name. But the guy who wrote the history of monetary systems, and he wrote many other monetary books as well.
Delmar.
Yes, Alexander Delmar. He gave me 3 of his books, and he explained to me it's because people don't realize there's a monetary system at play, at work. People think of it as money at work, but there's a monetary system that underlies how the money works. And unfortunately, in this country and every country that has central banking based, debt-based, private debt-based models of running the monetary economy, we all have the worst, you know, of the possible outcomes. And so he put me onto the monetary system, and it's the monetary system that they don't teach in school. And I want to say 2 things about that. I've gotten to speak with money and banking students, at universities, where I ask them that question. Do anybody here has studied the monetary system? A lot of times the hands go up, and then you find out, no, that's the banking system. No, the monetary system is not taught. It's not taught. I mean, unless maybe if you're at Wharton and you're at, you get up there into the central banking field, then everybody has to understand how the monetary system works. But the monetary system is so important that it needs to be respected, to me, made sacred as our common, and defended against all forms of subterfuge. And to me, central bank digital currency is a form of subterfuge. Does it matter that it's intended? No, it doesn't. It doesn't. It has the same effect. So why did I listen to my dad, when he was telling me this stuff, and I was like halfway here, halfway there. He gave me the Saudi book, and I got that. And I remember that he and I were exchanging this idea about debt, about how the debt-based money system is so wrong that it should be evident that. So he said to me that at that time, which was, I think, 1971, and he said, the national debt right now is 300 billion. It might have been 310 billion, I don't know, but it was in the $300 billion nominal range. And he said, and my dad was kind of like almost like a genius with math, to be honest. Okay, now he used the slide rule. Okay, he used the slide rule for most things. And he said to me, he said, if people understood the compounding interest problem of debt-based money and how that is going to influence the outcome of our society, the outcomes of our society, they would throw this money system away tomorrow. And as an example of that, he said to me, and this was another one of the things that he said that couldn't possibly be true. He said, in your lifetime, he said, that's $300 billion from 1790, whatever, to 1970. So it was like 180 years, and it was 300 billion. And he said, in your lifetime, the national debt will increase by $1 trillion in 1 year. Now, I knew he was crazy when he said that. Okay, I just said, hey, Dad, area, you know. So I used to sometimes go into his office that he had early in the morning, and he had one of those adding machines, you know, the kind of adding machines where there's a big roll of paper on the back, and then you can go like that. You know, they didn't do the compound interest on there. They just, you could add 3% or whatever, 4%. So he was using the average interest cost to the debt that existed and applying it, compounding it over time. And I'd go walking in there and his floor would be covered, completely covered with the white paper from the roll, because that's what he kept doing. That's what he kept doing. That's what he kept doing. And he was doing that, I thought, to verify the slide rule, you know, but really he was doing that because of the people who question, how do you get to that point? And that's how you get to that point. Compounding interest in a debt-based money system, every dollar that is created, that is introduced into the monetary quantity, has interest compounded in perpetuity. Every dollar in perpetuity. And at some point, you end up where we are now. Okay, debt saturation. Everybody, that's the name of the game. And by the way, if people came on here to learn anything about central bank digital currency, you're not going to learn it from me. Okay, I'm here to tell you why we need to defend the monetary system from the likes of central bank digital currency. Now, my dad said on this topic, he said, when that happens, when the debt increases by $1 trillion in 1 year, and that happened in 2018 to 2019, that year, a 12-month period in there, it increased by $1 trillion. And I said, what'll happen then? He said, well, it'll go to 2 trillion, and then it'll go to 3 trillion. And then it'll just get out of hand. And he said, and when it starts to do that, you're going to see all kinds of chicanery again, okay? You're going to see all kinds of efforts being made to change the way things are, to change the way things are. And he said, my idea is it'll either be an international, there'll either be a move for an international money system, let's call it a global money system, or it will be something else that completely undoes the currency of the countries. And to me, that's what central bank digital currency is. Okay, it's going to have the effect, and it is already being acknowledged that it will have the effect of doing away with the paper currency. Okay, all we have right now is bank money, bank credit money, balances, and currency balances, which I hear are running into problems for some reason. I'm not sure why, but anyway, the fact is that that's what they say. So we have this situation, and my dad said it's going to happen like this, and that's how it's happened. And my dad said the next thing that's going to come down the pike is a move to demonetize the government. And you know, I don't know how anybody else feels about the fact that the banks have been ruling the world for the last 100 years in this country, for the last 200 years everywhere, or 300 years, or 500 years everywhere. So we have this problem of money and banking. We can't have money without banking. We can't have money without somebody introducing capital into the equation of having the money. And that's what has to end. And that's what monetary reform is all about. And that's why we pursue monetary reform, each of us. And that's why central bank digital currency is an unnecessary and unlawful blip on the screen today. And we need to do away with it. So having said that you know, that's who I am. That's how I came to be studying money. That's how I got educated, and I feel that this is a huge deal. So when I met Stephen Zarlanga of the American Monetary Institute in 2007, And he had this American Monetary Act drafted. And when I looked at it, I realized this guy is legit. You know, he had everything in there that my dad said needed to be in there in terms of, and in fact, he had variations on my dad's themes on a lot of things, especially the funding of using the national money system to fund the state's economic development. And, you know, they call it revenue sharing in Canada, at least they did when I lived there. And that's what it is. That is essentially what it is. It's sharing the money power with the states. The states gave up their money power when they joined the federation, and the federal government has screwed them over. Okay, big time, and has not provided them with a stable and sound monetary system, and instead has just got them deeper and deeper into debt. And it's time to undo that. And that's why Stevens Arlanga's bill had it. My dad's nominal bill had it. And that's why the Kucinich bill had it as well. So the federal government needs to take it upon itself to fund itself with money and not debt, like we did with greenbacks. That's the monetary reform part. And don't let anything get in the way. Now, I know that there are a lot of people who are a lot of friends of mine who are, I don't want to say anything except interested in pursuing central bank digital currency for themselves and their posterity. But my dad told me about that too, okay? And he said, Joey, what you're going to come to find out with doing monetary reform is this. First of all, you're not going to get any girls doing this, Joey, because you know what? It's too crazy and nobody's going to pay any attention to it. But what he really said was, your friends are going to leave you behind if you stay with monetary reform, if you stay on the path to monetary reform, because their interests lie in many other places. And because of that, their interests are going to take them in a direction that welcomes things that are counter to what needs to be done. And to me, that's where we are in the monetary reform movement today. Okay, that is to say that the monetary reform movement, it has a goal, it has an ideal, but it doesn't have a collected idea of really focusing on getting there. Now, the monetary reform movement in this country, and AMI and the alliance, we just barely formed the alliance, and as we got it to be thinking about moving forward, we got a pandemic, and that pandemic locked everybody down in their houses, in their communities, and so there was not going to be any more meetings of the alliance. That is to say, personal meetings. So we have suffered. And to me, we can't afford to suffer anymore. And to me, we can't afford to suffer, carrying on some notion that people think might be a good idea. No, there's no call. Is there a call for central bank digital currency? There would be a call if there was a need, but there's no need and there's no call. It's something that comes down from on high. From on high where? On high in the Uber media, on high in the big data, on high with the people that wanna be able to kind of control and manipulate the information that makes up the monetary system. That part of it. They want to do it everywhere. Don't get me wrong. They want to do it with every level. They want to do it with every aspect, and no matter how you cut it. But the fact of the matter is that there's no need for it. There's nothing. There's so many things wrong with the monetary system. So many things wrong with the monetary system. I mean, that's why been trying to reform it since the Chicago School in the 30s. Since the Chicago plan out of the Chicago School of Economics in the 30s. We've been trying to reform it ever since then. And they would have waves that have gone up and down. Where does that get you? So I want to talk a little bit about some of the people who I've come to, again, to respect and to think about here, and why this thing has to be framed as to what it is. I wanted to go to, you know, one of my favorites, and especially in modern times, which is Dr. Hyman Minsky. Dr. Hyman Minsky, as most people know, is the guy who's famous for his financial instability hypothesis and a focus on financial instability, which to me is nothing more or less than the pro-cyclicality of debt-based money. Okay, that's what it is. Financial instability, it's guaranteed. And in April 1994, before, you know, just 2 years before he died, before he passed on, he wrote this paper while he was at Levy Institute with Dr. Ronnie Phillips, who's here, and this paper, and I wrote this simply the best paper on modern political economy ever written. Okay, my dad did not introduce me to this paper. By the time the mid to late 90s came around, my dad was ill with Alzheimer's, and when I discovered it, I just like was blown away. You know, I was just blown away. So to me, there's some reasons why this paper, you know, is important. And he talks about capitalism in a way that economists talk about capitalism. And so he says, financial instability and the decline of banking. Well, it's kind of funny because sometimes this central bank digital currency thing is about the decline of banking. Okay, but he meant the decline of banking because of the overcoming the banks by the non-banks and the financial, you know, financialistas, and saying the public policy implications. And in the book he goes to question whether or not this system, this monetary system, I'm going to call it the Federal Reserve banking system, that's what they call it, that's the title that they give to it, Federal Reserve banking system, is something that can endure. And he questions whether or not it can deliver the economic needs of a progressive democracy, a democracy that is trying to advance the well-being of the citizens. So if I could just take a look at these two points in this book, this is how it starts. This is actually the first page of the book. And I love this because it's so all-encompassing. He said, he's defining the problem. It's going to be talking about an economic problem, the decline of banking and its public policy implications. Definition of the problem. Banking, he says, plays two roles in a modern capitalist economy. It supplies the means of payments. And the means of payments is what central bank digital currency is, in my opinion, trying to get after. Okay, the payment system. And it channels resources into the capital development of the economy. Now, those are economist words. What that means is they determine the economy. Okay, the economy that you turn around and look outside, that's the capitalist banker's economy. If it looks good, keep it, protect it, defend it. But if it's really screwing up you and your family and your community and stuff, then change it. That's how I feel. So he says, banking plays these two roles in the capitalist economy, supplies the means of payment and channels resources, that is to say, finances, the capital development of the economy. So we need to keep that, we need to be thinking about that as a big deal. It's a big deal. And it's the problem that he identified in 1994. Why I say this is not only Minsky's uber book, but to me it's the best book on political economy, because it leads to the conclusion, as the Alliance for Just Money has adopted, it leads to the conclusion that we need to have reform to money. And in order to face what needs to happen. Instead of central bank digital currency coming, kind of crashing down upon the scene, he calls for a national monetary commission. And that's what we need. We need a national monetary commission. The Alliance for Just Money has a resolution in calling for a national monetary commission. And Dr. Minsky is the guy who put it all together. Now, the irony there, okay, to me, because two things I don't like, at least two, but central bank digital currency and modern monetary theory. Those are the two things I really don't like. I'm going to talk about why. So could I get to the next slide? Because the next slide kind of brings it in. Now, and this is number 2. This is the next page. This is the next page of the book. We haven't gotten off this page 2 yet. The theoretical background. Why is he's providing a theoretical background for the study that he's doing, that he's undertaking, which is the financial instability hypothesis, in which he integrates the discussions of Keynes's theory. So he says, what's important is the theoretical background. He says every economic policy argument reflects a maintained economic theory. It behooves anyone who analyzes and advocates economic policy to make where he or she, he didn't say, is coming from clear. Okay, so I'll say to you, modern monetary theory, have they ever made their economic policy where they're coming from clear? I've got all the MMT books, back here on the shelf, and I read all their papers, and it's furzy is what it is. It's very furzy. So the point is to me, this, if you don't legitimate where you're coming from clearly, then you don't have to me, it means that you don't have a sound. And that's why when you find modern monetary theorists always saying, well, just got to read more. You just got to read more. And this is kind of funny, because I was supposed to be on the Deficits Really Matter book reading tonight, but I couldn't make it. And so I continue, I continue to try to understand why there's any modern monetary theory at all. Okay, it's full of dead ends, and not dead ends, but dead ends. And so we have to say, why don't they start out with a book that, instead of getting right into the bank's balance sheets, why don't they say where they're coming from, what it is that they want to do? Now, they do throw a lot of really good post-Keynesian ideas, and they make believe that that's modern monetary theory, but that's not modern monetary theory. Modern monetary theory is the stuff that Loesler brought to the So anyway, but he says in addition, this is especially true if the maintained theory, central bank digital currency, modern monetary theory, of the analyst is significantly different from the conventional or orthodox theory of the day. Could anything be more different than those two things from the orthodox theory of the day? And therefore, it's especially true that they're obliged to tell us where they're coming from, and they don't. Central bank digital currency, where's it coming from? What's the idea behind it? I have no idea. So we get to so we're at that point, we say that. And then with regard to this, okay, how it's so true, and how it's been even though for all that time I didn't know about this, okay, but it's because it's true that it catches you, and it's so true. So I wanted to run a minute of a clip. I should say, I'm sorry, before I do that, okay, I just want to say that in 2008, we formed the Kettle Pond Institute for Debt-Free Money in Vermont, while I was living in Vermont at the time, okay? And and we had a website called economicstability.org, Now, people might think, well, that's from Milton Friedman, and it probably is true that that might be where my dad got it, but that was the name of my dad's organization as well, economic stability. So I picked it up, and then we made it the economicstability.org, being the website of the Kettle Pond Institute for Debt-Free Money. And one of the first things that my partner insisted, he said, Joey, people don't understand anything at all about money. So we want to try to introduce some literacy. And so he made me, make these 5-part monetary literacy course videos. And I'm going to play 1 minute of the one at the outset, and I'm going to explain why it relates to this aspect.
I'm Joe Bongiovanni, and welcome to the beginning of our monetary literacy course. In establishing the monetary literacy course, the first objective that I have for the listener, for the reader, for the participant in our discussion about the money system is to provide and to establish an identity among all of us with the money system that we have today. And in order to do that, I think we all need to take a step back and to understand this fact. This is our money system. The money system that we have, the United States dollar denominated money system of this country, is the people's money system. The money system belongs to the people of the United States of America. Too often we get the notion, or we get the feeling that our role is to be the consumer, to be the customer, to...
Okay, so sorry about that. I felt the need to explain to people the monetary system. Where am I coming from? I'm coming from, it's our monetary system. It's our money system. It's not the banker's money system. It's our money system. It's whoever we say and whoever we tell to be in the Congress, to write the laws, to have a money system that works for us. The point is that a monetary system is a power, an authority of the sovereign, and the people are sovereign here. And so, for that reason, to me, it's our money system, and it shouldn't be thought of any other way. And it should only be the pursuit of the reforms that need to have to be happening because we need the money system to work for us. So that's me, okay? That's me. Now, how about the rest of the monetary reformers? How about the Alliance for Just Money? The Alliance for Just Money, which was formed in 2018 or 17 or 18, was started in 17 and 18. So here's why we're here. The Alliance is a nonpartisan organization working together with individuals and organization allies. We share our purpose to achieve real monetary reform. What's our mission? To research, educate, and organize. So here it is, the whole thing, okay? This is where we're coming from. This is what we're about. This is what monetary reform is about. We're adhering, and we set it up to do it that way, to Hyman Minsky's observation about providing your reason for being and providing what it is that you're pursuing. So that's what should be done. That's what should be done with central bank digital currency. Okay, central bank digital currency has no parents. Okay, central bank digital currency came about because of data opportunities, financial technology data opportunities. We can get in there, if we can get in there and change this thing around. And by the way, so the changing this thing around is kind of a joke to me, because they're not doing away with the problems. They're not doing away with the fact that there's so much debt already that ordinary people. I'm not talking about the Uber bankers and, you know, the guys who are making the billions today. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about the regular people. Okay. They can't afford any more debt. We, the people, cannot afford any more debt, and we have a debt-based money system. What are we going to do about that? How about central bank digital currency? To me, that's where we're at. And we should reject the notion that we should do anything with the monetary system along the lines of passing the power onto the technocratic elite. And so that's why. So I don't need to know a lot about central bank digital currency. I really don't. Okay. Just give me a good reason for doing it. If you got any good reason for doing it, say what it is. Nobody who I have asked, why are we doing this? What problem is this going to solve? Has an answer for that question. It's just a juggernaut. And when we live in a society where the opinions of society are established by what? By the media. And so the media is controlling the message. Media is the message. It's controlling the message. Everybody thinks central bank digital currency is rocking and rolling along, but it's stumbling. Believe me, it is stumbling because people have gotten a whiff of its odor. And that happened a lot up there in Canada when the truckers went in there and they froze their bank accounts. And, you know, that's just like the tip of the iceberg. Now, it's not that those things haven't happened before, they have, but now it's all the data. That's all it is. You know, we got this guy, we got this, his license, here's that, here's that, here's that. So we don't need to be giving the technocrats more power to control our lives through the monetary system. We need less of that, much less of that. In fact, we want to actually reverse that. We want to make that impossible for the technocrats to be controlling our lives through manipulating data in any way. So that's my Minsky thing. Now, I wanted to just add another information piece from Dr. Frederick Soddy. Dr. Soddy wrote the book, The Role of Money, What It Should Be Contrasted with What It Has Become. And he was a Nobelist in chemistry, author of Science and Life. This book, Wealth, Virtual Wealth and Debt, Money versus Money. He wrote so many books. Okay, he was really, you know, to me, he was like the smartest guy in the world at the time. To be honest, I mean, that's who I am. You know, but to me, he was the smartest guy in the world at the time. But here's the thing. Here's the thing about Soddy. Being a chemist, a radio chemist, okay, so he was basically like a physicist, but only they didn't have physics as a learned science at the time. And he found that the technological application of the physics that, or the chemistry and physics that he was working at to help man, science and life, you know, to be trying to advance us, ended up getting militarized, ended up with the proliferation of nuclear weapons throughout the planet, et cetera, and he left it behind. He left the study of physics and chemistry behind, and he started to study the economy. And he studied the economy for a couple of years before he realized the most important thing that an economist can realize, any economist can realize, it's the monetary system that is the footing for the foundation of the national economy. It's the monetary system. And that is proven by the fact that the banks control the monetary system, and the wealthy, you know, the wealthy get wealthy by being close to the monetary system, by being close to the banking and finance system. So that's the proof that what's there is the role of money is to distribute the wealth, but it's either, if it's being mal-administered, it's to concentrate the wealth, and we have the highest wealth concentrations ever, I say, Why am I looking at it? So what did he say? Okay, what did he say? Okay, remember I told you that I read the preface. You know, it was the first thing I read. Well, this is not the preface. This is just an explanation, an application of Minsky's observation to what Sadi was doing. Because right at the outset in the preface, he tells them where he's coming from. He tells them what it's all about. And this is how he says it. The standpoint from which most books on modern money are written has been reversed. In this book, the subject is not treated from the point of view of the bankers, as those are called, who create by far the greater proportion of the money, but from that of the public. He wrote a book about the role of money and its effect on the public, who at the present have to give up valuable goods and services to the bankers in return for the money that they have so cleverly created. The bankers have so cleverly created fractional reserve banking and private money creation. And then they create it. So they not only created the system, but they create the money. This surely is what the public really wants to know about money. So to me, okay, there's Sadi, you know, a guy who has seen technology come along, devoted his life to it, turned his back on that because of the fact that technology don't do it, and turned it to money because he realized that money is the foundation for everything that happens in the economy. So that's, you know, that's kind of where that's at. Now, I guess at this point I'm gonna say this. Actually, if I could ask to run the video of Jillian Ted interviewing the Bank for International at the Bank for International Settlement Conference on central bank digital currency, if we could do that. Thank you.
So just as a matter of curiosity, and I'd like to ask this question to Jens Wiedemann as well, one of the things that came out of the BIS's survey, which is fascinating, is it's not clear whether it's even legal in many jurisdictions. I think half of the central bank survey said they weren't sure. Is it legal to create this kind of thing at the moment in either the US or Europe? Chairman Powell and then Jens Wiedemann.
You know, we would, that's a good question. And we would not proceed with this without support from Congress. And I think that would ideally come in the form of an authorizing law, rather than us trying to interpret our law to enable this. So I think that's how we would look at it.
What about the situation in Europe? Is it legal in Europe?
I think by the time we will proceed with, or if we proceed with the central bank digital currency, you can be sure that the legal basis will be sound.
Okay, so that's all that we need to see there. But the fact of the matter is that it's not legal. It's not legal. I mean, we have a private central bank in this country, and a lot of the big nations have private central banks, but there are also a lot of public central banks. But whether the nation owns the building that that the central bank is in or not doesn't matter at all. Okay, what matters is, where does the money come from? How does the money enter circulation? So the Bank of England, you know, well, the Bank of England, we have a public central bank. Who creates the money in England? Who creates the money in Canada? Oh yeah, I know there are you know, a lot of economic programs that introduce or bring money into the various communities. But fact of the matter is also, that's the way the world was set up after World War II, that anybody who's going to become participant in the global trade and, you know, agreements, et cetera, going to have to do it this way. We want to see an asset behind every piece of money that's out there. Okay, what about the asset of the nation? You know, what about the fact that it's the nation, it's the full faith and credit of the nation that stands behind the money? Okay, but why do we need an asset for it? You know, we make it legal, we put in a legal imprimatur on it, and we say what it is. So that's you know, the rest of the point is that we don't need it. And let's see if we could go to the next slide, because I'm going to try to wind this down. So this is what I'm saying. Why not? Remember, my whole point is, why not do the central bank digital currency? As a forum guide stated, central bank digital currency should be rejected as a monetary or economic or even financial tool of betterment. CBDC is not currency, and it fixes nothing of the present money systems. Okay, I'm supposed to be able to do something with this. I'm sorry. Money systems, debt-driven flaws, being business, consumer, and public debt saturation. We're frozen in place. Can't have any more money because we can't have any more debt. Unconscionable income and wealth disparities. Unconscionable disparities. And look how they have increased through the pandemic and through through the problems of the supply chain. Unfundable debt financing of huge public purpose needs. Now, this is the thing. This is what's so important. Where we are today, we need to have a reform to the money system so that we can have money without debt. And I don't hear any of that, except as a very vague claim, you know, like the Kumhoff and Almarova papers say that, oh, if we could do all of this stuff, could do all of this great stuff, we'll have equity. We'll have equity instead of debt. Well, you know how else you can get equity instead of debt? Greenbacks. That's how. Greenbacks. You know, they were issued, and it's permanent money. Public money is permanent money. You read Irving Fisher's books on public money. It's permanent money. It never goes away once it's issued. Debt-based money lasts the life of the loan, and that's all. So anyway, so like needs like reducing the energy throughput required for national economic production. Now, this was Sadi's thing, in case people don't know it. When Sadi got money down and he came to be realizing the second law of thermodynamics and physics applies to economic activity, and he realized that, well, we have to be judicious in terms of the amount of energy that goes into our wealth production. And so to me, what that means is the real Green New Deal. The real Green New Deal, okay? It's ecological economics. Sadi pretty much founded the science of ecological economics, wrote many, many papers on it, and his entire thing about wealth, virtual wealth, and debt could be called the part of you know, how the world needs to work. It's the how the world needs to work part of the role of money. And in order for that to happen, we need to have ecological economics. Ecological economics will be another setback. We'll take another setback with central bank digital currency, as will anything that's going on with regard to advancing our standard, I don't want to say necessarily our standard of living so much as the quality of our lives. Central bank digital currency. Central bank digital currency, it's a proposal that's simply out of time, both with the existing US money and banking laws, as we just saw. So for us, it's out of time. We In other words, if you need to do a law, if you need to change the law in order to have central bank digital currency, then change the law and have monetary reform. Because you're only going to get one bite at the apple here, folks. And monetary reform needs to be advancing now. CBDC, central bank digital currency, is a proposal that's simply out of time with the, oh, sorry, with the outlook for enhanced global prosperity generally. It can't be legally done, and with the outlook for enhanced global prosperity generally. And that's, again, part of that, the Green New Deal, et cetera, et cetera. It's a big data-driven attempt to introduce a novel, unknown influence, one of virtual artificial intelligence, over the already existing, brittle and shaky superstructure of global finance capitalism. Today, it's a risky pig in a poke. It's a pig in a poke, and it's a risky pig in a poke, because if it interferes with financial stability, then all of the things that we need to do are going to be further and further and further set back. And then lastly, let's see, what is the other page available of the slide? Okay, continue. Thank you. It's not really a child of the world central bank of bureaucrats, in my opinion. Okay, is what I'm saying about it. It's a big data thing. It's strictly a big data thing, evidenced by a lack of financial stability. Okay, from the Bank for International Settlements or from the Group of 30, you know, the other central banking group. So in other words, nobody has said, you know what, this is going to be okay from a financial stability point of view. Nobody has ever said that. Nobody has even really investigated it, although there are statements, but nobody's, in other words, you know, this thing is kind of coming down without any, it's like a parachute, you know, coming down into our world. And for the people who see another shiny thing coming down, oh, how about this? Great, it's great, it's all you need. But for people who understand how the monetary system works, and who understands how a modern monetary economy works, to me, it's the death knell of reform. Virtual wealth, an enrichment tool for the technocratic elite. It's not a monetary system phenomenon. It has very little or nothing to do with the monetary system, really. It's a dramatic and mysterious application of artificial intelligence, a new payment system media, ultimately designed to glean trillions, if not gazillions, I guess I forgot quadrillions, of nanomils from this ocean of legitimate monetary transactions passing through our interbank payments and settlement system, transactions that we already use to count the production and consumption of wealth in our national economy. We have no need for another circulating media, virtual in nature, to improve our interbank payment system. We have no need for that. No CBDC. The national money and payment system should be 100% deprivatized. Now, I'm going to be clear about that, because this is all the payment system. We got to have innovation in the payment system. We got to have more innovation in the payment system, and we got to have more innovation in the payment system. And if you do that, you'll have central bank digital currency. Now, all of that has to be undone. The money has to be, issuing the money has to be deprivatized. The money and the payment system needs to be deprivatized as well. Should be run by the government. Yeah, you know, contracting it out to private people. So that's it. I think that's all I'm going to say. Thanks very much for listening. CBDC, why not? And I'll be very glad to take all the questions, or not that I can answer all the questions, but I'll be glad to hear all the questions that people have.
Thank you very much, Joe. I was just about to put a message in the chat for people to go ahead and start raising their hands. I think the easiest way will be if you look for the reactions button at the bottom of your screen. And in that, there's a raise hand bar. That way I won't goof up and pick somebody in the wrong order or anything. I'm sure there's questions and comments coming, and let's start with Jeff Eder. Thank you.
Hi, Joe.
Hey, Jeff, thank you.
Yeah, I actually agree with everything Joe said. There's a link that I put in the chat called CBDCs. Do we need it? And I have a whole page dedicated to it. However, central banks have to look at it. And they do it for two reasons. If banknotes continue to decline, and if alternative digital currencies continue to be used as a replacement for, like, the Canadian dollar, for example, as a method of payment or a store of value and a unit of account, then it's a threat to the existing system. So all central banks, those are the two prime reasons why they're looking at it. And there is a problem with, control. Like, to me, it doesn't make any difference if it's a central bank digital currency or digital money, which is what we already have. The main concern for me is, how is it distributed? So we need to have control over how new money comes into the system, rather than leave it to a profit-making entity like a commercial bank. So those are kind of the main points that I want to make, and I'm supporting actually what Joe says. We have to look at actually having more say in how the financial system works. And I don't know if CBDC does it. Just has to be watched very closely as to how it actually gets implemented. And I'll leave that. If you want to comment, Joe, go ahead.
Hey, thanks, Jeff. I'm probably too simple-minded. Because here's what I know. I know that I do more transactions by my debit card now than ever. Okay, than checks that I used to write, etc. But there's more transactions happening, and there's more money. The size of the economy is growing. So, but to me, when I look at currency, currency as a not as a percentage of the money supply, but as a number, okay? That in the United States, now I have no idea about Canada, Jeff, because I've not looked at anything, but the United States, if you look at the last 10 years, which I did, it's 2022, and I looked at 2012, and I looked at the money supply in 2012, and I'm talking about the currency supply, excuse me, and I looked at the currency supply in 2022, and it's more than double. There's more than twice as much currency in circulation. So this thing about this, we're not all Sweden. We're not all Sweden. Sweden prides themselves on doing away with old-fashioned stuff. Not me. If it's working, don't fix it. And to me, the currency system is working. A lot of people want to have the currency, maintain the currency system because of the privacy issue. And that's a huge deal. It should be a huge deal to everybody. It's a huge deal to me personally, Anyway, so anyway, that's just my observation about that. We have twice as much currency in circulation today as we did 10 years ago. Now the economy has grown, of course. We have twice as much debt. That's the thing about it. So anyway, Jeff, to be honest with you, besides the fact that banknotes are in decline, I missed the second point that you said about what the banks are doing. I'm sorry, I was making my note. If you wanted to repeat it.
Yeah, if it's well, first in Canada, the use of banknotes is declining relative to the amount of other money in circulation. So
see, that's relative to the other money in circulation.
Yeah, exactly. So like every time I check it, it gets less and less. So, last time I checked using M3 as the measure of banknotes to, very liquid forms of money, it went from about 2.8%. Now it's down to about 2.3 or 2.2%. as a percentage of the whole money.
So
is-
what?
I know, but
That's my
it's
honest
not-
answer.
No, I know, but that's what they're looking at, is that's one of the threats. The other threat is that if digital currencies are used as a store of value, a unit of account, and a medium of exchange, if that starts to exceed the amount of transactions by cash, and I don't see that happening really in the short term, but those are the two main things that central banks are concerned about, and that's why they're doing all these investigations into central bank digital currencies.
Yeah.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thanks. Good.
Thank you. Sue Peters, what's your question or comment?
Hi, everybody. Joe, that was great. Thank you. I mean, I've been studying this subject, and you're so direct and clear about it. I want to thank you. I want to make a point to what Jeff Eder brought up about that the banks say they have to do it because of the cryptocurrencies and this and that. And I'm going to say this because I've been doing some deep dive research into the control by the private bankers from 1900 to 1940, say, about their control of our media. And I just want to give two quotes, and to think today, when they're even more powerful, the bankers, over so much more of our corporate world, how much more they're in control of our media. So I'm going to just give you, I have numerous, and this is, now remember, this is like 1900 to 1940, right? Okay, so JP Morgan Chase, JP Morgan and the other investment bankers had their money cartels, and they took over the economy over the 1895 to 1904, and then they were investigated by Congress as the money cartel. And this is one of the things. Okay, so one of the Morgan partners was a man called Lamont, Lamont, and this is from Ferdinand Lundberg, published a book 1937 called America's 60 Families. These are the 60 wealthiest families in this country in 1937. And he said, quote, the newspaper man who cover, and he puts cover in quotes, Wall Street, are instructed by their offices to see Lamont regularly and are referred to Lamont or to Aldrich, which was Chase Bank, by other bankers on Wall Street, who usually fear to speak, even anonymously, on general affairs. This is the power of the large bankers. Think of the power of Wall Street today. It's astronomical. Even back then, they had vast control over the media in the entire country. And then the last thing I'll just give is this quote. Okay, hold on. I had it. Yeah. So back then, they had put their tentacles into all different kinds of media. And Lamont, he had control over certain people who were working for or owners of these media. And one was this man called Henry Canby, C-A-N-B-Y. He founded the Saturday Review of Literature, which gave reviews of books, right, back then. And this is 1920, the quote is from 1922, okay. Canby admitted to the author Lundberg, who was a very well-known journalist and author himself, can be omitted, turning over to Lamont the book proof of a book called M-Day by Rose Stein, which discussed war preparations. This is World War I. War preparations, and criticized J.P. Morgan and Company. Lamont suggested to Charles Seymour, as a reviewer, a Yale professor called Seymour, who had been an associate with Lamont at the Versailles Peace Conference, who, since that peace conference, has promulgated far and wide the Morgan thesis that the US was brought into the war by the German submarine warfare. So Seymour, as the reviewer, attacked the book. Now, let me just say it. When I went to school, I was taught that we got into World War I because of the German submarine warfare. That was in the textbooks, the history books. And so I just want to say, when you hear these things, oh, you know, the bankers, the central bankers have to do it because this and that and this and that, they own our media. They are feeding this to the public, to us, so that we say, oh, that's true. God, they have to do something, don't they? Just, that's my point. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sue. So when you say about brought us into the First World War, was that incident called the Lusitania, and then it was later disproved that no, that's not at all what happened?
No, it's worse than that.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe we shouldn't get a.
I did a whole paper on
right.
World War I and the Federal Reserve, and in there.
Right, but just to make clear the point you're making now, I don't. Yeah.
No.
Thank you.
What the reason we got into the war is because there was a memo from our U.S. ambassador to Britain, and he sent it back then as a letter. He sent, or a telegram. He sent it to Wilson, and he said, if we don't get into the war, we can't give credit to England and France. And right now, they will fail. The Germans will win. And he mentioned J.P. Morgan in that letter. He said J.P. Morgan has given enough credit, and he doesn't have any more credit. And our economy, basically, he said, our economy is based on supplying the British and French with all of their war supplies and weapons, and our economy is great. And if we don't get into the war, our economy will crash. That's the reason. And I have another quote. I just say it quick, showing how there was an attempt to get that memo out into the media back then, back in the 1920s. And the bankers just moved in and muffled it up. So I learned, we got into the war because, the German submarines.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you. I see.
Sure.
Steve has his hand up to talk about this topic.
Thank you, Mary, and thank you very much, Joe. It was the analysis was very strong and powerful, and I've been reading Sadi and enjoying Sadi, and it's not always an easy read. And it's all good. It's all good though. And how I saw your presentation, Joe, was basically, if it's not greenbacks and we're not getting to where we want to go with this move, and the knowledge is there to get us to greenbacks, and they're not doing it, then is this worthwhile or not? And this is how I look at the situation, and I've been puzzling it through in my head because I plan to write something to the Fed shortly too. I think the need for this change in law to allow CBDC and all this going on did not come from monetary reform, but came from the practices of financial innovation. I think it came from, in 1970 with money market mutual funds and the growth of shadow banking. I think it came from swaps and derivatives. And much more recently, I think it came from the startup of Libra and DM as means of competition. And Libra and DM are money systems that basically shouldn't exist. But since the banks have been doing financial innovation seriously since 1970, or 71 actually, and earlier than that too, but I'm what's going on now is an effort for, they've let the cat out of the hat for the Libra and the DM, which there shouldn't be a competition with a money system with with greenbacks. So what's happening here? And Huber, in his presentation at the last AMI conference, sort of leads up to this, and he's working on a book in this direction too, by the way. So given that this is at best a partial step, is this a step forward in the right direction or not? And it's certainly not greenbacks right now, but is it a step in the right direction? And I tend to come down on the side is I want to give it a go because nothing can get worse than the present system. And maybe it needs to be corrected totally at once. This may be the only bite on the apple. But is it a step in the right direction? And that's what I've been wrestling with. And for me, I want to come with one. What happens with CBDCs? We've had what's called a dual circuit system. We have reserves that run around between commercial banks and the Federal Reserve, and the government gets an account at the central bank, and they get to play around with the money system there. If common people can now have accounts at the Federal Reserve, it sort of destroys that two-circuit money system from an accounting perspective. And it makes banks creating money a little more difficult, because if people can take their bank money, which they are the issuers of, and that's why CBDC, as it's being conceived of right now, is not greenbacks. If we take our bank money and choose not to keep it in the bank and put it in the Federal Reserve System, it changes the system. And since there's zero reserve requirements right now, it makes it, the banks may not have to worry. For them, it's a gamble, but they're not going to worry about that because right now, the reserve requirement is never going to go above zero. We're not going to have fractional reserve banking at 10 or 12% again, or 37.5% near the start of the banking system that Sue was talking about when the Fed starts. So if you do away with it, I believe the CBDC ends up setting up in one or two small ways a little bit of an Achilles heel for the banking system. One is, and I'm an educator, is if you don't have to explain the two-circuit model, and you can explain that the Federal Reserve can directly fund by issuing, we'll call it central bank money, as they're being the first issuer, which is the equivalent of greenbacks at that point, because it's permanent money. If that can happen, it helps out with the, say, the federal budget, and this is a partial solution. And this way of helping happens in Canada. It happens in New Zealand. I believe it's even happened in England. It's where they create direct money and put it into circulation. And it's considered competition then with the banks. But it really injures their accounting system. And it forces us, all of society, to find new circumstances somewhat. And the Fed's going to probably make it easy for the banks to do it. I think that's where monetary reformers, and we need to have a grassroots movement to come in. And just about if we can push central bank money, then that is the equivalent, that is permanent, it's greenback money, and it stays in the system unless it's taxed out of the system or unless it's taken out of the system in some way or another. So that it alleviates some of the pain. Does it take away the pain? Will the bankers become less greedy, less capitalistic, less monopolistic? They'll try not to. I mean, they'll try to control everything. But I think this is where where a fight can be with the monetary reform movement, with the common citizens that saying, no, we need to change the banking system and right it. So I see, so I answer the question a little bit, is CBDC a step in the right direction? I'm willing, at this point where we are in the suffering we're at, I'm tending to think it is a step in the right direction. It gives us an avenue to shoot for. I think what happens, say, for positive money, positive money went about as, Ben Dyson took it about as far as he could, and he needed other countries to participate. It needed to be bigger than England doing it, because there'd be unfair advantages of banks. If all banks can create money, but not English banks, they can't create the credit to grease the system internationally. If we need to be thinking of a future system internationally, and I think this is the one move that takes us in the right direction. So rather than saying the glass is empty, I'm looking at it as the glass is partially filled, not sufficiently. And is the wool still over our eyes? Yes, banks are still the first issuers of money, was the way they want to conceive it. But there is a pushback. Another little silver lining for us is that in 2005, there were virtually no economists with us, no economists. 10 years later, in 2015, we had some, and we had Kumoff Yamaguchi, and now since then, on AMI, we've now have Sergio Rossi and this Kumoff with Soleil Omarova rethinking seriously. And we may not be in agreement, it may be too centralized. How do we get money out to the fringes? Could it be a libertarian? I think, Edgar Wortman's coming up with a proposal. I think he's going to presenting it. It's if you look at the end of the banking, it's going to be a more liberal system for how you can do peer-to-peer lending type of a lending cooperative. And I think they may be trying it in Sardinia, actually. So I hope we'll be learning about that. But I think this can be a little step in the direction. And we then have to, if Omarova and Kumhoff and other economists are working from on top. And they're the ones, because of their delicate positions, they cannot say nationalize the Fed. We, coming from the bottom up, can say we have to nationalize the Fed and we have to go further. And the fact that we're having this debate tonight enough, and we'll come up with on different sides, I think it's a healthy scream out in the dark. I think of the Chinese citizens shouting out their windows that they're hungry. We're shouting out our windows, we need a new system. But I think this will take us partway in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. There is a question in the chat, and then I'll read it for you, Joel. It's about I'll just read it. In the talk, you mentioned the situation with the truckers. Can you give more context on that, and especially how the technocratic sector makes all the rest of us more vulnerable if we have CBDC?
Okay. Yeah, what I was referring to was, you know, the movement, the trucking movement, the truckers movement in Canada that happened, and when and of course what they were on the road to oppose the mandates for vaccinations. Okay, that you had to be vaccinated in order to go from one province to another, or from the United States to, or across the border to the United States. And they did a really great job of organizing themselves in terms of their effort and financing, you know, their ability to protest to the government. That's why they went to Ottawa, to protest to the government. So, so what happened was, they were doing crowdsourced funding, and you know, I'm just going to say, like, using several different you know, methods by which to raise money so that they could keep the effort going. And what happened was that the government in Canada, to quell the opposition to the mandate, got all of the monies that they were using stopped. Okay, think of it like, you know, the economic sanctions of, you know, that are going on, you know, in the bigger world, the national world around us. But in this case, it was just a group of citizens versus the government, and the government having the power to stop them from being able to have access to both the money that they raised, which was in their accounts, and the money that they had. And so basically, you know, that's the idea. The idea here to me is, well, it was a political process that was underway, okay? And it was attempting to reach a fruition on a point that was interrupted by the government having the control of the data being the digits in their bank accounts. So that was just like the first example of, and then there were several others, you know, that came, you know, right on the heels of that, and that happened in different places in the, you know, different places in the world, not just in Canada. But that's what it was. You know, it was the example of when you give anybody the control of that data. Okay, this is the thing about you know, Stephen's comment, you know, that to me, it's like, is it a step in the right direction? Well, let's see, if we're going to be handing over more power, even more power to the centralized powers that we already have in combination of in media and in data and in government, quite frankly, you know, that without first establishing that, you know, we have a monetary system that will enable us to achieve the goals that we set for our societies. Without having that, we're weak and subject to being wiped out. period. And therefore the Great Reset will be come on us for real. So that's the answer to the question. If I understood it right, what I was talking about when I meant about the truckers. This is a dangerous, unknown situation that we're getting into. And Stephen says he wants to put a nice face on it, and that's fine. That's fine. But how long are you going to do that for? How long are you going to put monetary reform on the side while you deal with central bank digital currency coming at you from here, there, and everywhere? And however long it's going to be, no, this is the time to do monetary reform right now. This system is broken. We should do monetary reform right now. So this thing that comes, parachuting down with all the glitz and all the lights and everything on it and says, hey, central bank digital currency. I mean, it's like, what difference does that make? What difference does that make? And I heard Stephen say, oh, well, it's going to be, you have no idea, Stephen. You have absolutely no idea what form central bank digital currency is going to take when it comes down. And you're not going to have any control over it either. It's going to be whatever big data decides it's going to be. And the fact that that this effort, again, the Kumhoff and Omarova effort, that they're working some, I don't know, I mean, to me, almost alchemy, quite frankly, in terms of the terminologies that they're using and the and the methods for saying that this is going to be like greenbacks, like sovereign money. Remember sovereign money? Sovereign money. The government creates it. The government issues it. The government pays for public goods with it. That's sovereign money. That's what greenbacks are. I don't hear any of that. Never heard a word of the government doing anything with central bank digital currency, quite frankly. So the idea that it's going to be some kind of a second cousin to the Chicago plan is just BS, capital B, capital S. So to me, I don't know how you hit your wagon to the stuff that's coming out here, just because it looks good and sounds good and has lots of flashing things going on around it, and because Stephen also mentioned the earlier attempts at, I'm going to call it virtual money, okay? The early attempts at virtual money that kind of came out and went away and kind of came out and went away. It's like that should be the best example as to why we shouldn't let it get very far along at all. Because once it has, an impetus that seems to be legitimate, which it's not legitimate, but seems to be legitimate because we have people like Kumhoff, and I don't know, Omarova. I don't agree with anything about Omarova, to be honest with you, but Kumhoff I did, No, it's not there. It's not there. Hey, Michael Kumhoff, remember your paper? It was banks are not intermediaries. That wasn't it. That wasn't the paper. Banks are not intermediaries, and why it matters. Why it matters, okay? So we're going to want the banks to be intermediaries, and it matters because it's the public that's going to be gaining from all of the money that's in circulation because it's our money system. It's like, it's so elementary to me, and my dad warned me about the glitz. My dad said, hey, Joe, when it comes down, you never know what it's going to be. It'll be an international, and will this be international? This could very well be international. Central bank digital currency, central banking digital currency. So I'm sorry, I just don't get it. I don't see the appeal at all. To me, it has no appeal.
Thank you.
Over.
Thank you. You make it plain, Joe. Hey, two people have their hands up. First, Joe Polito, then Howard.
Hey, Joe, it's always good to see your passion. And with all your experience and rubbing shoulders with so many people, nobody should ever dismiss your concerns. I have a few questions. Let me start with one, because there's a number of people got their hands up. I've been following, a lot of different papers and articles, both by private banks and central banks and think tanks, people like Yanis Varoufakis, who, by the way, like Omarova, sees central bank digital currencies as a path to democratizing money. But a common thread in all of these groups is a fear of cryptocurrencies. And Jeff started with that in his first point. And I just do, we're already very concerned about the fact that the private banks have so much control of the system, print so much money, dictate where the money goes and so forth. And we're all against that. The cryptos are, at least the banks are chartered, right? And we have some control over them. But the cryptos are, libertarian dreams. And I have also attended a few Cato things and Mises. And these guys, this is just heaven for them. Yeah. Decentralizing money creation, it's like the wild, wild west, issuing all those banks that issued their own notes and everything. They just love this idea. So I just wondered, have you looked into that side of it? This threat, this alleged threat to the monetary system as it stands, the threat to governments. We want to see governments do more for the people, and these guys would defang the government even more. They would hide. There'd be much easier to evade taxes and so forth. So I just wondering if you've looked at that, if you're concerned about it, and if you have some ideas on how it should be addressed, if not with CBDCs, which is, of course, the answer. And even the banks seem to be willing to give up some of their power to create money in order to get protection from this threat. So I'm just wondering, have you looked at this threat, and do you have some ideas on how to address it? Thanks, Joe.
Okay, Joe, thank you very much for all of that. But if I want to make sure that I really understand the question, is not, it has to do with just crypto assets, really. The coming of crypto assets, having currency denominated crypto assets that are going to be used to trade, I'm going to say, okay? So to me, it's one of the things I read was Hayek's the denationalization of money. I had a hard time with that, to be honest with you, because, like I said, to me, every nation is sovereign in money. That's what a nation is. Nations are sovereign in their money. They are the supreme. The nation is the supreme authority of the money system. Every nation has money statutes, and so what we really have is a situation where I don't want to say the libertarians. I just want to say, like, peer-to-peer, like everybody's talking about how great it is to have peer-to-peer. Well, isn't that great to have peer-to-peer? Isn't that great to have peer-to-peer? I don't know, how great is it? I don't really know. I want to lend you money, you're going to lend me money. Well, we have a monetary system in place, okay? And, banks doing lending, to me, is nothing wrong with banks doing lending. I want to promote banks doing lending. I want to promote credit unions doing lending to a much greater degree, and special purpose banks to a much greater degree. But banks doing lending is what it's all about. Okay, so So the idea that these crypto assets, no matter what they are, coins, Bitcoins, whatever, if people want to say like, hey, I'm going to sell you my book, my Saudi book for, 12 Bitcoins. Of course, that would be a lot of money, but still, I'm just saying if it wasn't a lot of money, then there's nothing wrong with that. Then there's nothing wrong with that. It does, to me, that does not threaten at all the national monetary system, the national currency system, not at all. It's just people, kind of walking on the side of the road. And as a matter of fact, I would encourage it. To me, there's nothing wrong with it. Now, some people say, oh, it's going to take away some power from the banks. Well, if it takes away some power from the banks, that's fine. If the banks ain't creating money, you see, that's the thing. It's so difficult to stand in the middle of this fork in the road where we're either going to go more centralized, and that's how I see central bank digital currency, or we're going to see more democracy. And that's the weird thing. Omarova sees this as the road to monetary economic democracy. I don't see it that way at all. Okay, I think that they know that they need to say that, and they say that. But I don't see it that way at all. I don't see there's any advantage to you want to democratize the money, let the government create it and issue it into circulation. And how could it be more democratic than that? The government is deciding for the people what to spend the money on, and they're doing it according to maintaining the stability of the purchasing power of the currency. So it's like we have this other thing over here, have this great other thing over here, okay? This monetary reform thing over here, and we're diddling around with something that's coming down on a parachute with a lot of lights on it, and some people are making claims about it that may be valid after it's studied for 10 years or 15 years, and somebody comes out and says, okay, here's the plan, here's how we're going to do it. And then everybody can understand that plan. Then everybody can get behind that plan. But it's not that. It's not that. Okay. It's going to be either this or this. And if you do that, it's going to be either that or that. If you do this, it's going to be either this or this. It's like people, trying to create a reality when we have an alternative reality to solve the problems that we have. And if we don't know that we're going to solve the problems that we have, how far down that road do you want to go, not knowing if it's going to solve the problems that we have? To me, none, not at all. Anything that you do going down that road prevents you from going down the other road. So that's just my take on it. Joe, I want to get back to. I think there was a second part of your question. So I don't believe that there's any validity to the fact that central bank digital currency needs to come about because a bunch of crypto guys are going to be out there and they're going to be stealing the market for money with their crypto assets. It's crypto assets aren't money. They're not money at all. There's nothing money about them. They're just assets. They're assets that have a monetary denomination associated with them because of money that was, money that was really there to create the asset in the first place. But if people don't understand that it's the monetary system that's important, all of the talk about the banking system and solving the problems of the banking system, no, solve the problems of the money system, and the banking system will take care of itself. Will take care of itself because they won't be able to create any money. They're going to have to become more honest.
Joe, thanks. We're down to just 10 minutes or so, and we have two people with their hands up and another comment, interesting comment in the chat. So go ahead, Howard. We're kind of limited now.
Okay, there. Hi, everybody. Thanks, Joe. Terrific presentation. I was listening to it in the car on the way. I'm glad that I'm home now so I can make a comment. And I just wanted to say, talking about innovations, that this comes from innovation. It's come from the top. It comes from anything that comes from the top. How can we trust that? That's the people that have been screwing this world and this planet are coming from the top. and their ideas all come from the top. Now, in innovation, all the innovations then from 1970, was there a single innovation that helped the people and the planet? Or did it just make the rich richer? I think that's the only innovations that have ever happened since 1970 was to make rich richer. That's all it is. So the CBDC comes along. Suddenly we have this big PR campaign, and some of you are participating in it, is to create the CBDC, which we have no idea what it is. It is not defined. There's no legislation. It's just bullshit. You're just talking about any idea you can think of about it that might be positive. But the thing is, it came from the top. So how can it be positive, really? I believe that we would be much better off organizing the opposition to CBDC, of which there is considerable out there already, because nobody wants the damn Fed running their money system. They know nobody trusts the Fed. 80% of the population in this country doesn't trust the Fed. Okay, so get rid of the Fed. And that's what we would do. So we would organize opposition to CBDC, and the solution is the AMRA. The solution is we've got it already. We've got monetary reform. That is the solution. We know it's the solution. It's historically proven to be the solution. And that's what we should be going after. This whole thing about crypto and its assets, I agree with everything that's been said. It's not a threat to the banking system. In fact, the wealthier they dominate it. Right? I mean, you don't get in that game without a bunch of money. And if you're going to control a system or dominate a system, you're going to be the bigger buyer of the thing. It's not small guys winning in this game. And, and it might represent a scrap among the elites for control, which I think CBDC could be if they wanted to. Create one that was a programmable currency that they knew exactly where every dollar was and could turn it on and off at will. And which they can sort of do now, but this would make it much more surgical. Surgical strikes. And so that's my position. I feel like we should be organizing the opposition to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Howard. Thank you. Stephen has his hand up.
Thank you, Howard, and thank you, everybody, and thank you again for your additional comments, Joe. From a Saudi perspective, I want a people's money system. I want the government or the people creating money for our society. If it's a local public money, that would be good. If it's other things, that's good. If it's another system called cryptocurrencies or DM or Libra, I put that under the category of a Ponzi scheme and under the category for Libra and DM as corporate greed and corporations wanting to get in on the banking system and them getting the seigniorage rather than the people. So I'm against the Libra, I'm against the DM, I'm against those other currencies. I want the people to have the money. The next thing is, when it comes to climate change, war, and COVID, and this corporate greed, yes, we're heading towards a great reset. Do we want to see the system break down? Do we want to see people come over the hill with pitchforks? I'm not sure. I would like to see us be a little bit intelligent, look at what's coming and adapt ourselves and work towards changing it. And my response to the Fed is not that CBDC is correct or good. It's that we need greenbacks. That's what's good. And there's greenbacks in different forms today, but I would like to see a greenback and they can work towards it. Now, when you break down their system, well, two things I want to say there is if you go towards the simpler system rather than the two-circuit system, you have education. And then you can go and tell people that the Fed really needs not to exist, but it really needs to be another branch of government. It needs to be a fourth branch of government working in important ways for the good of everyone. Not the DM, that's money out for them. Is it pre-money in the cryptocurrencies? No, that's private gain. I want a people's money gain. That's where I'm coming from, and that's what I'm working towards. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you. In the chat, Josh Harrower said something about a third path, libertarian path that has not been examined in this conversation. And I don't quite get what he means. I wonder if you would speak to that.
Thanks, Mary. The third path, I was just alluding to what Joe Polito said earlier about his visit to maybe the Cato Institute or whichever, whatever, libertarians. But my understanding is Goldman Sachs is planning on launching its own blockchain currency, blockchain-based currency. And so for me, I really do take quite seriously the concern that I see it as we have indirect privatization. Here in Canada, be like Canada Life Insurance or Royal Bank of Canada or something that gets the seigniorage for dollars issued. In the future, perhaps it is Goldman Sachs that, they don't even have to, like right now, Government of Canada has 100% share, market share. But imagine like the scene where Goldman Sachs has 30% market share of seigniorage. I may be mixing apples and oranges here, but in terms of using the word seigniorage. But I believe we cannot discount the threat of cryptocurrency to undermine the stability of our tax base, because I think where cryptocurrency is going is kind of democratizing offshoring of investments.
Okay. Thank you.
Interesting.
With just a couple minutes left, I'm not sure if I should ask for a response to that, but I do see that Ed, I thought he was just waving that he agreed with something, but no, he wants to talk.
So, may I talk?
Go ahead, Ed. Go ahead. You might be
Ed,
having the last
speaking
word.
speaking as an American citizen, certainly the very thought of central bank digital currency is terrifying, but not because of digital currency, but because of the central bank, which is not a sovereign bank. In Canada, since I'll speak as a Canadian now, I'm more than happy for our central bank to consider digital banking, because our central bank is owned by the people of Canada. So if they create currency or money of any kind, it should be on behalf of Canadian people. But right now, of course, our politicians have given away that right to the financial sector. But if we had it, digital money by the central bank that is owned by the people, that doesn't give me a problem. But this central bank not owned by the people is where I see the difficulty. Thanks. Interesting show. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm going to put in a little plug for the sponsors of this conversation, the Alliance for Just Money in the US. We are, and then I'm going to give somebody the last word. I think probably Joe. The Alliance for Just Money is a pretty new organization, and these coffee houses are meant to engage more people in thinking about, talking about the money system and its deep root problems. And so we rely completely on the generosity in volunteer time, in thinking and participating of our members. Volunteer time and financial donations are very helpful. We hope that almost everyone who attends the coffee houses becomes a member and, well, hopefully a participating member. That would be, that would help take us all forward on our mission to have possible futures with a decent money system underlying. Go ahead, Joe, have the last word.
Oh, me?
Yes.
Yeah, as far as what Ed just said about, well, it's going to be okay for us because we have the Bank of Canada and we own the Bank of Canada. Well, we've owned the Bank of Canada for all these years, and the Bank of Canada hasn't prevented those private banks from issuing all the money in Canada except for the paper. And so what's the magic? I guess the way I look at it is, if you want to have a democratic money system in Canada, what you need to do is to have the government issuing the money and gaining from the issuance of the money. And that's not going to happen to me unless it's governmental in nature. To me, the Bank of Canada is I would say it's quasi-governmental. That is to say, it has agency of government, but it doesn't seem to be doing anything for the government. That's the way I'm going to put it. Over.
No, actually, that's Joe. The Bank of Canada does actually create money for the government, which is substantially different from the United States.
Say that again, please, Jeff. I'm sorry.
The Bank of Canada does create money for the government. So it regularly absorbs security issues directly from the government, which makes it quite different than the United States.
I'm sorry, it absorbs security instruments?
Issues, yes, directly from the government.
Okay, so the point is that it's the debt of the government that is being financed.
That's correct.
That's not issuing money, Jeff.
No. Oh, well, we can argue.
It's not issuing money. Issuing money is greenbacks.
No, Joe, it's money that goes into circulation that's spent on government programs that continues to circulate in the economy in digital form.
But backed by treasuries, no? Which have to be paid, no? With interest,
No? It doesn't
no?
have to be paid. It just can continue to be rolled over exactly the same way. When you look on a balance sheet and you see on the liability side, you see currency, right? There always has to be some kind of asset that's backed by it. Well, what happens when that asset matures? They roll it over because
Jeff,
with or without interest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we're all leaving with questions. Questions are good.
Yeah.
Questions are good.
Good.
And go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, just to clear that up with Jeff and others, is the question would be, the Fed turns over beyond its operating costs, the Fed turns over money to the government and as income. So if they're getting income from those bonds directly purchased from the government, do they give that profit to the government after they pay for their own expenses? That would be a question.
So this is another thing why the Canada, if you go to the PNC website on the home page, look at the transition video. So I explain it quite clearly at the very end of the video. In Canada is almost already doing it right now, but they only do it on a partial basis because they don't want to affect or still beholden to the private commercial banking system. So they're still beholden to them in a certain aspect. That's why they only absorb a certain percentage that's created for the government. But if we actually had power to get parliamentarians to actually change it, all we would have to do without even changing the legal framework currently, we could just get the government to continue to absorb a greater percentage of bonds. And then we don't need bonds. The Bank of Canada could create digital money and introduce it directly into the Consolidated Revenue Fund directly for government spending. But anyway, that's part of the transition video on the PMC website. And then of course it goes into more complete monetary reform in the second video. But that is possible, easily possible. All we need is the political will in Canada. Of course, that's huge.
Jeff, please.
Thanks,
That's
Jeff.
that's all we need. Jeff, will you please put the link to the TMC video that you're referring to, put it in the chat?
Yes.
Sue Peters has her hand up. Looks like she's gonna have the last word before everybody starts saying goodnight. Go ahead, Sue.
Oh, I just wanted to ask Jeff, since the sovereign money spigot was turned off by the government of Canada for the central bank, and I believe by the BIS influence, how much debt has the national government of Canada have?
The national debt of actually Canada has the lowest debt to GDP ratio of any of the G7 countries. Now, I haven't done any statistical analysis, but it's probably because the Bank of Canada absorbs a certain percentage of the direct issues from the government.
Thank you very, very much. We'll leave the chat open for a minute in case you can put that link in it. Does that answer your question more or less, Sue?
Okay, I just put that in the link, so
Very good.
please watch the video.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary. and Thank you, Joe.
Thank you all.
Thanks,
Thank
Joe.
you all very much.
Right.